In 2009, the city of Tracy, California, existed in a comfortable middle ground. It wasn't the sprawling, anonymous metropolis of nearby San Francisco, nor was it a sleepy, isolated town where time seemed to stand still. It was a community, a vibrant tapestry of neighborhoods where families put down roots and children's laughter filled the afternoon air. At the very heart of one of these neighborhoods, the Orchard Estates Mobile Home Park, lived an 8-year-old girl who was, in many ways, the heart of the community itself. Her name was Sandra Renee Cantu, and to know her was to know what pure, unadulterated joy looked like. To see a picture of Sandra is to understand instantly why she left such an indelible mark on everyone she met. She had light brown hair that held the golden streaks of the California sun, a testament to countless hours spent playing outdoors. Her brown eyes were sharp and intelligent, sparkling with a vibrant curiosity for the world around her. But it was her, a smile that truly defined her, a big, genuine, and ever-present smile that seemed to radiate a light all its own. She possessed a cheerful energy that was not just noticeable, but infectious. Sandra was the kind of child who could turn a stranger's bad day around with a simple, friendly wave. It was a bustling, loving hub of family. She adored her older siblings, viewing them with a mixture of awe and playful admiration, always eager to be included in their older, cooler world. She remained unbreakable, fortified by regular phone calls that bridged the physical distance between them. Her family was her anchor, her safe harbor, and she was the undisputed center of their universe. Beyond her front door, the mobile home park was her kingdom. With 100 homes arranged in a close-knit layout, it was a self-contained world where neighbors were more like extended family. For Sandra and her friends, the familiar, sun-baked streets were a playground without fences. Her after-school routine was a sacred ritual. She would race home, drop her backpack in a heap by the door, and dash right back out into the golden light of the late afternoon, her laughter echoing between the homes until the call for dinner signaled the day's end. The adults in the community grew accustomed to the sight of her zipping by on her scooter or skipping down the sidewalk, a blur of happy motion. A friendly hi from Sandra wasn't just a possibility. It was a near certainty, a small but consistent thread of warmth in the fabric of the neighborhood. Like millions of other kids her age, Sandra had a singular, all-consuming passion, the Disney show Hannah Montana. When one of its pop anthems came on, it was an event. The world would stop as Sandra transformed into a superstar, singing and dancing with an uninhibited joy that was mesmerizing to watch. In truth, the magnetic pull of the television screen during her favorite show was just about the only thing in the world that could convince her energetic spirit to be still. Just a few weeks before our story begins, on March 8th, Sandra had celebrated her 8th birthday, a significant milestone for a girl so full of life. She was showered with love and gifts, but one present stood out from all the rest. A simple pink Hello Kitty t-shirt from a neighbor. She cherished it instantly, with the fierce devotion only a child can have for a favorite object. Her mother, Maria, would later recall with a sad smile that she practically had to negotiate with Sandra just to get the beloved shirt into the laundry. It was more than just clothing. It was a piece of her identity, a vibrant symbol of the happy, carefree, and protected world she inhabited. Sandra was more than just a happy-go-lucky child. She possessed a deep well of kindness and empathy that was remarkable for her age. Her Aunt Angie once captured this beautiful essence in a poem she wrote for her, saying, "She had arms of an angel, gently giving you a hug. When she told you I love you, on your heart she would tug." That was Sandra. A bright, energetic, and profoundly loving little girl, just finishing 2nd grade and buzzing with excitement for the endless possibilities of the coming summer vacation. She was a child standing confidently on the threshold of her life, a life that felt as safe, predictable, and full of promise as the familiar streets she played on every single day. Friday, March 27th, 2009, unfolded with the comfortable and familiar rhythm of the end of a long school week. For Sandra Cantu, it was a day buzzing with the promise of weekend freedom. After school, she followed her usual routine, spending a few hours playing at a friend's house before returning home around 4 p.m. But the unique energy of a Friday afternoon is a powerful force for an 8-year-old. The day was far from over. With 2 full days of no school stretching out before her, the evening was a blank canvas, ready to be filled with adventure and play. She approached her mother with a simple, eager request. Could she go out again, this time to another friend's house just a short walk away within the safe confines of the mobile home park? Permission was granted, but it came with a promise, a simple pact between mother and daughter that would soon hang heavy and ominous in the air. Before dashing out the door, Sandra agreed to the one steadfast rule of the Cantu household. She would be back in time for dinner. This wasn't a casual suggestion. It was a cornerstone of their family routine, a rule that Sandra, a remarkably responsible and obedient child, had never once broken. She wasn't one to test boundaries or give her family any reason to worry. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower, casting long, cool shadows across the neighborhood, the familiar and comforting smell of dinner began to fill the Cantu home. The family started to gather, the sounds of plates and conversation creating a warm domestic scene. But as they settled in, a quiet absence was felt. One small, familiar voice was missing from the chorus. One chair at the table remained empty. At first, no one was alarmed. A few extra minutes of playtime was easy to understand. She's probably just finishing a game, someone likely reasoned, brushing off the initial twinge of concern. But 5 minutes of tardiness stretched into 10. 10 minutes then bled into an unnerving 15. Inside the home, the atmosphere began to subtly shift. The casual chatter quieted down, replaced by an expectant silence. Her mother, Maria, likely stepped outside onto the porch, calling Sandra's name into the growing twilight, fully expecting to see her familiar figure come running down the street, perhaps with a breathless apology for being late. But the street remained empty. The concern, once a quiet flicker in the back of their minds, started to morph into a palpable, heavy fear. Every passing minute felt heavier than the last, an unnatural silence where her daughter's cheerful voice should have been. This was not like Sandra. This was not her at all. A quick phone call was made to the friend's house where she was supposed to be. The answer that came back was the one they feared the most. She wasn't there. Maybe she had been there earlier, but she had left. The timeline became a frightening, blurry mess. The routine of a Friday evening had fractured, and in its place, a terrifying void was growing. The family fanned out, their voices now laced with panic, calling her name into the darkness. They knew, with a certainty that chilled them to the bone, that this was beyond their control. This wasn't a child who had simply lost track of time. This was a missing child. The moment came when they had to make the decision no parent ever wants to make. To admit their worst fear was now a terrifying possibility, and to ask for help. At 7:53 p.m., after exhausting every other option, Maria Cantu made the call that would forever divide their lives into before and after. On the other end of the line, a 911 dispatcher heard the words that signal the start of a family's worst nightmare. I have a missing daughter. With that single desperate phone call, the search for Sandra Cantu had officially begun. The morning after Sandra vanished, the Orchard Estates mobile home park awoke as a different place. The familiar Saturday calm was shattered, replaced by the grim efficiency of a full-scale police operation and the anxious, hopeful energy of a community thrown into crisis. The search was on, but it began with a perplexing and deeply frustrating announcement from the Tracy Police Department. This official stance, however, seemed to dissolve within hours in a jarring and unexplained reversal. The investigation suddenly intensified to the highest possible level. The city activated its Emergency Operations Center, a centralized command hub typically reserved for catastrophic events like earthquakes or floods. The search for one little girl was now officially a citywide emergency, a stark and confusing contradiction to the earlier message of calm that had left so many unsettled. While the official response seemed unsteady and chaotic, the community's resolve was immediate, powerful, and unwavering. Hundreds of volunteers, many of them complete strangers who had only heard the news, descended on the area, united by a singular, desperate purpose. They turned the city into a gallery of hope, plastering Sandra's smiling face on flyers, ensuring that every storefront, telephone pole, and car window became a beacon for her return. They organized their own search parties, creating disciplined human chains to comb through open fields, dense parks, and murky creek beds, inch by meticulous inch. The official effort was just as massive. Police officers went door to door, their urgent questions hanging in the air. Specialized dive teams explored nearby waterways. K-9 units worked tirelessly to find a scent. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their rotors a constant, thrumming reminder of the urgency, and mounted patrols covered the more rugged, inaccessible terrain. Every vehicle entering or leaving the mobile home park was stopped and methodically searched. Not a footprint, not a piece of clothing, not a single tangible clue. Compounding the community's growing frustration was the official decision not to issue an AMBR alert. Authorities explained that the strict, rigid criteria for an alert, which requires a specific suspect or vehicle description, had not been met. But to residents watching the frantic search unfold, this bureaucratic reasoning felt like a critical and inexplicable failure. One neighbor's bewilderment captured the public sentiment perfectly.
If I would have heard an Amber Alert, and I'm thinking I would have gone on the internet to see what this child looks like, because this was the area she was missing.
Then, investigators uncovered their first significant lead, a silent witness that had been recording all along. A neighbor's home security camera had captured what were likely Sandra's last moments of freedom, a grainy, silent film that was both a vital clue and a heartbreaking image. When police released a still image from this video, they drew public attention to what they believed was a bag or purse on her side, subtly floating the theory that she may have run away. To her family, who knew her character inside and out, as the search dragged on without a trace of her, their hope became a desperate public plea. Sandra's father, Daniel, rushed to Tracy to join the search, his face a mask of raw as he stood before the news cameras.
Please, bring her home. I love you, honey. Please come home soon. Please take care of her. You were once a kid too. Just please, bring her home. You would do the same for anyone else.
Officials echoed his plea, their words carrying the heavy weight of a search that was growing colder by the hour.
But it's day 7, and we realize that, but also know that it's a lucky number 7 also, and we still believe in happy ending.
But behind the scenes, the investigation appeared to be mired in a bewildering state of confusion. Police held press briefings twice a day, a strategy meant to convey action and control, but they often had no new information to offer. At one point, this disorganization became embarrassingly public, as a news report starkly highlighted.
Actually, Adrian, we've had kind of a surprise here in Tracy in the last hour. That's because Tracy police are now confirming that Sandra Cantu's father was here earlier today being questioned. That's a surprise because during a 10:30 morning news conference, Tracy police said they did not know the whereabouts of the father, and they even speculated that it's possible the girl could be with him. Right after that, minutes later, there was a woman who appeared across the street from the mobile home park where the dear... She said she had taken the girl's father to the police department this morning. Here now are sound bites that we're going to play for you. This is sound from the news conference, and then the comments from the woman who showed up a few minutes later.
I'm not exactly sure if the father has an alibi or not. He came up from Southern California shortly after. I can't remember the exact day, so our detectives have talked to him on multiple occasions.
You know where he is?
Not at this point, no.
You don't know if she might be with him?
That's a possibility. Yes.
I dropped him off, walked him in. He's
When?
in at 8 o'clock this morning. He's in the police department. I was there with him.
So again, the confusion was that during that morning briefing, the lieutenant did not know that the father apparently was here in the Tracy Police Department being questioned, although we certainly get a strong indication that the Tracy Police, at least according to the spokesman, don't believe he is a suspect and apparently are not concerned about the possibility that the girl would be with.
Public trust was rapidly eroding. The search for Sandra Cantu had become a massive, round-the-clock operation, a testament to a community's love. But with each passing day and each baffling press conference, the hope that had once fueled them began to curdle into a desperate. While the official search for Sandra Cantu raged on, marked by confusing press conferences and a frustrating lack of progress, a secondary, far stranger narrative began to quietly unfold from within the very fabric of the Orchard Estates mobile home park. This parallel story centered on a 8-year-old neighbor named Melissa Huckabee. On the surface, she was a familiar and seemingly trustworthy figure. She was the granddaughter of a local pastor, a respected Sunday school teacher, and most importantly, the mother of a young girl who was one of Sandra's frequent playmates. She was, by all appearances, just another worried member of the tight-knit community, sharing in the collective anxiety and grief. But from the very beginning, her behavior was anything but normal. It was bizarre, intrusive, and in retrospect, deeply and chillingly calculated. Shortly after Maria Cantu's frantic 911 call set the official investigation in motion, Melissa sent her a message that was stunning in its self-centeredness and odd timing. It read, "Tell the police I had something stolen today around 4 p.m. The strange rambling of a panicked neighbor. But in hindsight, it was Melissa's first, deliberate move to inject herself into the center of the unfolding tragedy, to weave her own story into the fabric of the case. Her involvement then escalated dramatically the very next day. Melissa approached investigators not as a concerned neighbor, but as a key witness who had made a crucial discovery. Acting overwrought with emotion, her voice trembling, she handed them a handwritten note she claimed to have found on the ground near her home. The note was scrawled in a crude, almost childlike hand, with deliberate and obvious misspellings, as if written by someone with a poor grasp of the language. For investigators who were already being inundated with a flood of tips, psychic visions, and false leads, the note and Melissa's highly theatrical demeanor were likely viewed with a healthy dose of professional skepticism. In high-profile cases, it is not uncommon for certain individuals to seek attention, inserting themselves into the investigation for a fleeting sense of importance. Melissa's behavior fit that pattern almost perfectly. She was interviewed, her information was logged, but her actions were initially categorized as those of an unreliable attention seeker, not a viable suspect. But Melissa Huckabee was not someone who was content to be ignored. Apparently frustrated that her bombshell evidence wasn't sparking the massive police response she seemed to expect, she pivoted her strategy and took her story directly to the media. She contacted local reporters, leaking the contents of the note and adding a new, critical detail to her public narrative. When seasoned journalists pressed her for logical specifics, had she reported this significant theft to the police, her answers were evasive, contradictory, and vague. To the public watching her interviews on the evening news, she came across as an odd and increasingly unreliable character, perhaps someone trying to claim a moment in the spotlight of a heartbreaking tragedy. But with that story, she had done something irreversible. She had unknowingly, or perhaps with chilling forethought, forged a direct and undeniable link between herself and the case. The police may have initially seen her as a peripheral distraction, an emotional neighbor complicating a high-pressure investigation with strange stories. Whether she or the investigators fully grasped the monumental significance of that act at the time was another question entirely. But the clock was ticking, and the truth, however dark, was beginning to surface. The massive, round-the-clock search had consumed every resource and every waking moment, but it had yielded nothing but dead ends and a growing sense of frustration. The flyers bearing Sandra's smiling face, once crisp and new, began to curl and fade in the spring sun, silent testaments to a hope that was beginning to feel fragile. Then, on the morning of April 6th, a single, unexpected phone call from a quiet country road brought the entire city to a dead stop. The call came into the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office just around 10 a.m. It was from a local farmer, a man whose property included a sprawling dairy farm a few miles from the mobile home park. While making his routine checks on his irrigation system,
Di parte de la policía porque pues yo ya sabía de.
I called the police immediately because I was very aware. I see it every day on the news, and I have kids of my own, so it's on my mind. So when I came across and saw the
the law enforcement response was like a flash flood. Within minutes, the tranquil, rural landscape of the dairy farm was transformed into the epicenter of a major crime scene. Police cruisers and investigative vans choked the narrow dirt road, their flashing lights a stark, pulsating intrusion against the pastoral calm. For 9 excruciating hours, an entire city waited, paralyzed, glued to their televisions and radios, praying for news they also desperately dreaded to hear. The official silence from the authorities at the scene was deafening, a vacuum that was filled with speculation and fear. Finally, as evening fell and the light began to fade from the sky, the police convened a press conference. The official who stepped to the microphone wore a heavy, somber expression that said everything before he even spoke a word. He confirmed what the hours of intense activity had suggested. The entire community that had collectively held its breath for 10 days, all were now forced to confront the most heartbreaking reality imaginable. Sandra was not coming home. All eyes and all suspicion now turned toward one person, Sandra's neighbor, Melissa Huckabee. With the heartbreaking discovery at the pond, the black Eddie Bauer suitcase, the very one Melissa Huckabee had so publicly and bizarrely claimed was stolen from her, had been found. The cryptic note she had discovered, with its oddly specific location. The woman who had tried so hard to insert herself into the story was now revealed to be its author. In the minds of investigators, Melissa Huckabee was no longer a person of interest. She was the prime and only suspect. Detectives summoned her to the police station for another round of questioning. She drove herself, walking through the front doors with a composed, almost defiant air, seemingly oblivious to the fact that the web of her own making had now closed completely around her. She was prepared to tell her side of the story one more time, perhaps believing her performance was still convincing enough to control the narrative. She was wrong. This was not an open-ended inquiry. It was a systematic dismantling of a carefully constructed lie. They began with the suitcase, placing a photo of it on the table in front of her. They moved on to the handwritten note, the piece of evidence she had delivered herself, and then they played their trump card. A forensic handwriting analysis had confirmed, without a doubt, that the writing was a perfect match to her own. She hadn't found the note, she had written it. Then, they walked her, minute by painstaking minute, through the digital timeline constructed from multiple security cameras, a timeline from which she had no alibi and no escape. The footage showed Sandra skipping happily in the direction of Melissa's home. It showed Melissa's own SUV pulling away from her residence just 8 minutes later. It tracked her vehicle to the vicinity of the Clover Road Baptist Church, the very church where she taught Sunday, school, and most damningly, witness testimony from the owners of the dairy farm placed her vehicle, her presence, right beside the pond at the exact time investigators now believe the suitcase was left there. Melissa first offered a desperate, fantastical story. As the detectives methodically took this story apart, pointing out every inconsistency, every logistical impossibility, Melissa's composure finally shattered. The interrogation wore on, and under the crushing, inescapable weight of the evidence against her, her wall of denial crumbled into dust. The denials stopped. She admitted her initial claims were lies.
Stand up.
You arresting me?
Yep. Turn around that way. Put your hands behind your back.
You didn't do anything.
You're under arrest.
Come on.
Go downstairs and process you. Take your destiny that way.
Melissa Huckabee's journey through the justice system was swift and decisive. Prosecutors, holding a case that was virtually airtight, presented her with a plea deal. If she pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, they would take capital punishment off the table. Her sentence would be life in prison with no possibility of parole. For the community of Tracy and Sandra's grieving family, the plea deal was a source of complex and somber relief.
Shock, basically. I mean, well, that's good then. I'm glad she pled guilty then.
She's probably thinking she's going to be in prison anyway, so save my life.
Finally, there's a little closure than before, you know, just waiting and waiting and waiting. That's the hard part for the family.
She finally, why not? You know, why even waste the money of the public, or, you know, hey, let's get it done. Let's get it over.
The legal case was officially closed. Smiling girl who had brought so much joy into so many lives in her short 8 years on Earth.
Why do you think she's touched so many people? Across the country, people are responding. What is it about this one little girl?
She was
complete innocent, and if you saw her skipping in those last moments of that video without a care in the world, then all of a sudden taken for absolutely no reason, doesn't that touch your heart? And I think that's what touched other people's hearts too. Taken. It's ridiculous.
Do you know something? Call the police. Let them know what you know. We can resolve this issue, and then we could all get closure. Everybody can get closure on this.
How do you want Sandra to be remembered, Joe?
She's a happy little girl, skipping. You know, in that video, she's skipping and she's flipping her hair, and she was just happy. She just smiled all the time.
Do you miss your granddaughter an awful lot?
Oh, yes. I took her to school every morning, picked her up in the afternoon.
As the dust settled on the case, a deeply disturbing detail emerged from the investigation's periphery. Just 2 months earlier, in January of 2009, another family in the same area had placed a frantic call to the police. Their 7-year-old daughter was missing. At the time, the incident was treated as a misunderstanding. Share your analysis of the system and what could have been done differently in the comments below. Sandra Cantu would be a young woman today. She never got to go to middle school, attend her prom, or fulfill her childhood dream of becoming a nurse. All of that bright, beautiful potential was spring afternoon, a heartbreaking and permanent reminder that the most fundamental duty of any community is to protect its most vulnerable members.